All right. This was a very interesting talk. I mean, like you were saying, Ron, there are some common themes across the different presenters in terms of how we look at hybrid and multi-cloud solutions, especially from a financials point of view. So my presentation here is going to focus on the management and governance services around that topic. My background, I've been in the industry for 25 plus years. I've been on the vendor side and on the customer side. I worked for a insurance and financial company for years. So we were deploying multi-cloud in a hybrid and different cloud provider scenarios. So there's some interesting thoughts around how you go about governing those kind of environments. So as my presenters, as you heard the presenters prior to me, let me move my panel. There's nothing in the way of the presentation, right? Is there anything blocking the slide?
No, I think it looks fine. Hopefully everyone else can see it as well. It might just be the Zoom control panel.
Yes, the Zoom control panel was on top of it. I think we're good now. Like you're mentioning, Ron, there are some themes that came out of this discussion, the prior discussions. Risk is always top of mind for financials. How do I manage risk? How do I identify risk? So that's more of a security kind of a lenses that we talked about. The aspect of data is a huge concern for financials. Data could be anywhere. Someone mentioned it could be different teams, different divisions of a financial, different type of services and applications they may be deploying. So the data aspect, the analyzing of the data, etc., is another success factor for financials. Customer experience, I think we heard that as well in the presentation. Like if a customer is looking at a mobile phone for a mobile app service for a financial, the experience must be excellent. Otherwise, you might sacrifice clients for a financial institution. And then, of course, reactions with market changes. How do I, as a financial company, react to the different trends that are happening? For example, Gen AI, like everybody's talking about it. In fact, the next session is going to be around that. So as these new technologies emerge, new capabilities arise, how do I govern those different touch points that constitutes the core applications, client serving application, front end, back end, etc. So in this conversation, what we are going to talk about are how do you take the multi-cloud environments and the hybrid environments into a single pane of glass, if you will, across the different infrastructure components. The on-premises, which is the hybrid cloud conversation, has been going on for years. It's not a new concept. So most financials or any other companies, they have residential components in data centers addressing data, security, application constructs, different development environments, etc. Now, in today's world, acquisitions and mergers are happening. So there might be a situation for a financial where you merge with another company or you integrate components with another company where they might be on a different cloud provider than you are. So how do you take what they have and what you have together into different lenses that will help you manage and operate the environment consistently? So if you look at the AWS solutions around multi-cloud management, it has many pillars. What we are focused around here is the operations management aspect of it. If you cannot operate, if you cannot see environments, if you cannot operate them consistently, you sacrifice security, user experience, and potentially inconsistencies around data. So what we're going to talk about are the management and governance services from an AWS point of view across hybrid and multi-cloud. I'm going to focus just on this, but to level set, we have solutions that will increase visibility, integrate with security and identity. You've probably heard of IAM services, and we can integrate the different services around user access, who's accessing what from where. The data analytics, like I said, the data could be anywhere. How do you govern the data and have a single point of view in terms of the analytics across the different stacks? And of course, compute and containers. Compute and containers is an interesting conversation, because as we talk about hybrid and multi-cloud, you could be running compute instances in other cloud providers, including AWS, and you could have compute and containers also in your on-premise locations across the data centers. So the management and governance across all these different environments is key to be successfully creating an operations structure around your multi-cloud and hybrid strategy. Now, from an operations perspective, the AWS cloud operations have different components, and that's what we're going to talk about. How do we zoom into the different services that can help you operate more effectively? This slide is a bit busy, but the gist of this here is, from a financials point of view, you have fintechs, you have different startups, you have some financials that are born in cloud, like they may be only consuming cloud native services, and then you have the large enterprises where you have a mix of legacy and modern applications catering to different use cases. How do you take these different environments and operate them holistically? The breakdown here could be compute, infrastructure, containers, the data aspect, access, security. Someone mentioned, I think John had that question about auditing. How do I audit environments that are so dispersed around different providers on-premise or different cloud providers? Now, the three key aspect here is, how do I integrate my operations lenses with application-aware capabilities, and of course, automation across the board in terms of visibility, management, ITSM structure, governance around the different processes of change management, etc. So with that said, if we look at this, it's a busy slide, but the intent here is to get you thinking of the different aspects of how you could operate multi-cloud environment with AWS services. Let's start at the bottom, right? Like, you have workloads running in AWS, you may have workloads running in your data centers and other cloud providers, and edge environments for banking could be ATM locations or branch offices. You may have workload requirements around that construct. So how do you take all of those components and structure a cohesive operations model leveraging different services? So if we start at the bottom, the configuration, observability, security, that compliance is a big one. We have these different services here that can integrate with what I'm going to talk about mostly in this session, the AWS Systems Manager, which is kind of the Swiss Army knife of all the different automation layers, your change management, like your event management, incident, like these are top priorities for financials to make sure, like, if changes are happening, we can track them. If we have fleets of infrastructure scattered around different providers or on-premise, how do I manage them and have a cohesive change management model? The ITSM, which is key as well. Like, I have situations where customers use Jira, ServiceNow, in some cases both. Can I create a service management architecture that would take into consideration all aspects of event management, change management, and automate the process, so you are looking at consistently delivering the configuration aspects of the different types of infrastructure around your different destination? Now, the final aspect, like we just talked about prior to this session, is how do I audit this environment, make sure the configuration is compliant, it's following the confirmation aspects of PCI or NIST or CSA or any kind of those standards. So let's, before I dive into the systems manager, are there any questions? I'll take a pause here.
Not right now, but again, encourage everyone to just use the Q&A and keep it as interactive as possible.
There are some slides I'm going to go through faster than the others. So talking about systems management, right? Like moving on, AWS focuses on customer feedback. What we hear from customers talk about is we have disparate operating models and we have disparate systems. We have different organizations within our enterprise that are managing different environments. A lot of it is in AWS, some of it is in on-premise, and then with mergers and acquisitions or different integration patterns, it could be in different cloud providers. So how do I operate across this scale? And if I can operate, how do I scale and manage the operations across the different environment at scale? Because when you are successfully deploying workloads, you are increasing the footprint of your infrastructure. You may be deploying many EC2 instances, many containers, add more infrastructure. So as your volume increases, your operating model should be flexible enough to kind of keep up with that scale. And of course, automation is a given. Anything that we do should be able to automate. Like in my past life, there was a phrase that we talked about. If you do something more than once, it can be automated. So think about scenarios where automation can come into play. So zooming into the AWS Systems Manager service. So this is kind of a central pane of glass for your different environments to be managed from a single service ecosystem. And I'll get to that in a second. So if you look at the features we have node management, IT service management, and application management built into the system manager. It's extremely powerful in terms of how you want to leverage these different feature components and integrate that into your ecosystem or the operating model that you have today. Now, you may have different teams, I hope not, but you may have different teams using different tools, which is actually a very common pattern of managing incidents. So if there are integrated systems, if there's an issue in one part of the workload, it may not be visible to others who have dependencies to the workload that's having an issue. So is there a way to create better visibility through ITSM and make sure that any issues are triggered across the board so that everybody is aware there's incidents going on? The other aspect here is, can I see what do I have deployed? What are my infrastructure components? EC2 containers, different databases, the data stores, like, where is the data? Is it in S3? Is it in a database? Is it like we talk about vector databases now? So we have different flavors. Like, what is the operating model across these different disparate sets of data? Can I manage them and view them centrally? So Systems Manager gives you that capability. And if you look at these components, you have the flexibility of choosing what you want to turn on. A lot of companies, like for example, ServiceNow has a central CMDB. So if you are doing CIs for your infrastructure, do you have a common CMDB? Now, in my past life, when you ask someone, what is our central source of truth, you'll get back 15 different targets where, yeah, we have 15 different CMDBs. That's definitely a risky scenario because you can't manage infrastructure from 15 different places. You need a central point of governance where you can have CIs and infrastructure components being deployed consistently across the board. So Systems Manager gives you that level of control across these feature sets. I'm going to go through these slides quickly. Sometimes people wonder, like, okay, this sounds great, but how long does it take for me to set this up? The setup for Systems Manager is you go into AWS console, you turn it on, and you have it. The quick setup guideline is very quick. I mean, like it says, you can turn it on, point it to your resources within AWS, and then have the appropriate agents for your on-premises environment and your other cloud environments. And almost, I shouldn't give you a time, but very quickly, you will see that this dashboard is populated with your inventory across your AWS environments and your other environments that you target. The Explorer is what I was talking about. You have an operational dashboard. You can see what's going on in terms of the resources that you're managing from Systems Manager. You have different metrics. You have different categories of data that will help you make decisions in terms of volume, scale, configuration elements, etc. So it gives you insights into your landscape across AWS, other cloud providers, and your on-premises from this single dashboard. And this is one of the sub-features of the ITSM that we were looking at previously. This one is a bit interesting. When I was on the customer side, change management, when you say change management, people just start walking away, right? Because it's a quite complex process. You have many dependencies, you have many touch points, and depending on the type of change, it could be disruptive or it could be non-disruptive. So if the changes are disruptive, you need approvals. You need to be able to audit your changes for backtracking or rollback. So the change manager feature within the Systems Manager is a very useful tool to kind of bring in your change management governance under one view. As I mentioned before, we have connectors to ServiceNow or Jira, like if you have other ticketing systems that you want to bring in as well. Maybe just for your cloud environments within AWS or outside, you have that option to centralize your change management governance. The Ops Center, I'm going to skip through this pretty quickly. It's like if there's an issue, it gives you the option to look at where the issue is, what are the environments that the issue is happening at, and it gives you actionable outcomes. Like you can click on these links that you see here as part of the issue statement and zoom into what actually is happening and do remediation right from the dashboard. Now, this is where I want to spend a bit of time, right? So like, what does this architecture look like? Accessing the Systems Manager is easy. You log into your console, type in Systems Manager, and you can see the environment. Now, the question is which is what systems capability do you want to turn on, right? So item 2 here, am I looking to solve my inventory issues? A lot of financials, especially for auditability, the inventory accuracy is big. What do I have? If I don't know what I have, I can't secure it, I can't look at it, I cannot have statistics based on analytics performed on it, etc. So having a good inventory across the board, for some institutions, that's a priority. And then you have Patch Manager, like if a security patch comes out, I want to press a button, patch my systems from a single dashboard. There are many tools that can provide that level of granularity, but from Systems Manager, as long as you have the appropriate capability enabled, you can distribute your patches very quickly. The verification and processing, like verify what's running in the VPCs in AWS. And if you have IoT deployments, we can verify your IoT fleet, your data center infrastructure, and infrastructure from other clouds. And the reporting aspect, we have different services that you can pipe the capabilities that you see in item 2 into the different levels of reporting structure, and you can run queries and create dashboards and create systems management or operational management views for the different aspect of operations across the board. You might have a group for data centers, you might have a group for cloud, so you have a lot of flexibility. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit, like we're talking about configuration. So in a regulated industry, configuration is key. Like you have to have consistent configuration across the board. For that, what we heard from customers are, can I evaluate my resources for compliancy? Compliancy could be like, am I conforming to PCI or NIST? Again, how do I manage the different aspects of compliancy at scale? You can see a pattern here. How can I reduce my manual compliancy issues through automation? So for that, the AWS config service is part of the systems manager integration capability, where not only you audit your configuration, you display that into a operational dashboard, and you have a central point of configuration management and operations management across the board. So configuration history, compliance, drifts, configuration drifts is another one that you can monitor across the board through AWS config. So if you look at how it does it, right? You have your audit requirements, you pipe that into the configuration manager, AWS config. It has different rules and conformance packs, which I'll talk about in a second, to make sure it's compliant with a certain standard. And then you have different APIs and different targets that you can use for the reporting aspect of your configuration. The conformance packs is something that's built in. There's a link here that will take you to a lot more information. So if you're a PCI shop or a NIST or CSA, like any kind of compliance requirements, we have a YAML package already for you with the right levels of checks so that your environments are compliant with PCI or whatever standard you are looking into. So this is a very powerful capability where it will ensure that your configuration consistency is always there. And this is, we talked about in the other slide, that when you have your AWS configuration rules, it pipes into the different AWS services where you can have a comprehensive look around security, your backup policies, your access controls, like how do I audit my users, make sure you're compliant with your confirmation packs, and if you're using the firewall, like are my firewall policies aligned with the rules for my application? So this is all done through a central configuration schema, if you will. And lastly, the auditing. So if you look at the schema here, like you have a management component, you are mitigating risk from configuration point of view using AWS config. You're managing the risk by aggregating them into AWS System Manager. Then you can run reports in terms of assurances across Audit Manager, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, or log management, and present that to auditors in terms of your confirmation to audit requirements. So this is the 3-line model for the Institute of Internal Auditors, and that's the slide I'm presenting here. So AWS services align to your audit check marks in terms of configuration and operational audits across your hybrid and multi-cloud environments. I have the resources to the 2 services at the bottom here, and there's some more useful information for multi-cloud operations within AWS. So hopefully you'll get a chance to read through them. And that's it from my side. I really appreciate your time to listening to this session.